Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supergirl, Lucifer, as well as Gotham. Before I get started, I want to let you know that, like always, if you ever feel the need, like, oh, I'm talking about something that you really don't care about, and say maybe you're not caught up with the latest episode of TV show I'm talking about, or you just, like I said, don't care about it, look in the description down below. I have the time slots on when I start talking about each of the particular shows. That way you could just skip over whatever you don't want to listen to and just listen to what you really care about. But first of all, we're going to talk about this week's episode of Supergirl. A very interesting episode where you have a group of bank robbers who are using alien tech weapon supplied to them by Cadmus. It's very interesting how far people will go to achieve their goals, because the whole thing is to kind of turn the people, because everyone's kind of more rallying behind the idea of like, oh, and amnesty for aliens to live there, but then it's like Cadmus is manipulating this whole situation to kind of get public opinion kind of turned against aliens, because it's like, oh, aliens bring such dangerous weapons here, and now other people have them in their hands. It's like, you'd be able to protect yourself and we need to join together and fight this. It's like, because if you don't, the aliens are going to win essentially. And when you get the lady who runs Cadmus, and the fact is she believes in it so hard, wholeheartedly, she thinks it's like, no, I'm doing this because I'm trying to save the world, because she's working with these guys, and they're like, guys, like, I'm just trying to line my pocket. I just want to do bigger and better jobs and get more money. She's like, I'm doing this to save the world. I'm doing this to save the future before we get infested with these aliens. I'm doing my part to save this world. I can't remember how many children she said, whether she had one or two, but it's like, I do it for my kid or kids. And like I said, she wholeheartedly believes in it, and it's just like, a situation like that, you can't change a person's mind. They're just like dead set in their ways. So that was kind of like, for one, they had very interesting weapons, especially that one that was kind of like a gravity gun, sent that cop car like high into the atmosphere. It was freezing and everything, but Kara was able to get to it in time to save that cop from dying. And it just kept going to it, never stopped. So it's kind of funny when you actually think about it. So there's probably like technically a police car somewhere on, out there in space floating. I'm sure it probably got eventually pulled back in by maybe eventually the gravity wore off, and then the car kind of got pulled back in. I think that sucked, because that means there's no telling where on Earth that would land. Maybe re-entering the atmosphere, it'd break apart. Or maybe it broke apart exiting the atmosphere too. I'm not very technical when it comes to science, so I know stuff burns up entering the atmosphere. I don't know if it does the same way exiting. Maybe not. I don't know. I guess if it goes fast enough. But yeah, that was just interesting to me. But really what I find it most fascinating is the fact is that the lady who runs Cadmus turns out to be Lena's mom. Now, once again, I keep forgetting the situation because I'm an idiot. They're adopted siblings, or are they actual half siblings? So maybe she has the same, obviously different mom, same dad type of situation. I'm curious to know about the dad situation. It's Lionel Luther canon, or is that just a Smallville thing? Because any other material, I've never known Lex's dad. Smallville was the first show to really get to know Lex's dad. So I'm curious if that's kind of the same thing in this one, and was he kind of the same guy that Lex was? But nevertheless, I'm very curious to see what kind of dynamic that creates. Is because she's like, oh, she's Cadmus, she hates aliens and stuff like that, yet her daughter is hanging around one because she got Kara and Supergirl to come to that event that she was putting on and everything. And I love what Kara was doing, just okay, in her, she was like, okay, Operation Doubtfire, and just every time you turn around, she switched back to the other one. It's like, oh, Kara, you just missed Supergirl. I was like, oh, really? Oh, gosh, if only I was here faster. It's like, I can't believe you actually did that. The turnaround on that was incredible. I think she could honestly put Clark to shame with moves like that. Granted, I think Barry would still have her outmatched in that, I feel like Barry could probably pull it off a little bit smoother just how fast he is. So it's kind of like, oh, wow, what, the Flash was here? Woo. But still, a pretty good job. I love that. That's gotta suck, though, having to, jump into your suit and then jump right back out of it, and then that's just got to be. Not jump back out of it, put your clothes on top of it. It's been a while, so I'm actually forgetting what she was actually wearing. She was wearing a dress or something, wasn't she? Nevertheless, because I'm wondering, because it's if she was wearing a dress, that means she did have to change out of the costume. So it was not just hiding it underneath her clothes. I don't remember what she was wearing. Nevertheless, that's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic goes. I mean, it'd be interesting if you see her mom try and use Lena as a way of like manipulating Supergirl, putting her in the line of fire. Basically, like, leak some kind of stuff to Lena and then have that information get to Supergirl. That'd be kind of interesting. Or maybe we get to see her trying to convince her daughter to be like, Lena, don't you think it's a little bad you're hanging around aliens? They're bad and stuff like that. But Lena's like, well, she's Supergirl. She's fine, Mom. She's helped save my life multiple times. So, I don't know. That'd be kind of interesting. The enemy of, because like I said, I brought it up before. Like, I like the fact is that Lena and Kara are becoming friends and everything, and even the fact is that she's friends with Supergirl, because that's something kind of bringing it back, like the Smallville. That's something we never actually got to see that side of, because I mean, obviously she's keeping her identity secret, but Clark always hid his powers from Lex, so Lex never got to know the superhero side of Clark, and now Lena is going to get to know both sides. So that just in itself brings an interesting dynamic, because it seems like she's befriending both of them too. But what I really liked in this episode was the whole situation of how it was dealt, that basically the whole thing was a trap because Lena set the whole thing up. Now, I interpreted that one of two ways, because even like Kara as Supergirl was asking, I was like, that they're going to hit, the party. She's like, yeah. It's like, but that's why I'm bringing you here. It's like you risk, it's like, oh, that's a big risk. But she's like, well, you risk your life every day going out there to save people. So it's like, I'm trying to do good. Or is it too much? Is it impossible to think that a Luthor might do something good? To me, my brain went multiple ways. One way my brain went was kind of like, okay, this is a publicity stunt. That's all it is for you. Or two, you're kind of an adrenaline junkie and you're looking for the thrill of it. But it turned out, no, she was actually trying to do the good thing. That Shiva was working on that machine underneath, and Wynn went underneath the table with her to kind of, fiddle with it, and they're having that conversation back and forth, and I'm like, oh crap, I was like, oh, go Lena, you're like super smart, which instantly my brain goes, Lena and Wynn? I mean, come on, things didn't work out too much well for Lynn the last time he had a girlfriend, or even interested in a girl, because we see how that kind of ended badly between him and Kara. I mean, they remain friends and everything, but still kind of a sore area, plus his last girlfriend turned into a supervillain, so that can't be easy. I'm also curious, will we get to see, we would get to see Banshee this season. That'd be kind of interesting to see, because it does make you wonder, sorry about that, with the changes over to Network, are they dropping some of their supervillains that they created last season? I mean, because there are certain story elements they, obviously the CW is kind of backpedaling away from, so it makes you wonder if that's the case. I hope it's not, because I hope they get to take those characters and kind of do very interesting things with them. I'm very interested to see what they would do with them. But nevertheless, it's just like, oh man, Lena's super smart. But then I thought about it. It's like, because I tend to forget the fact is Lex is actually really smart. Like, you don't always get to see it. And I kind of forget that. But he makes such a wonderful adversary to Superman. It's because he actually is a very intellectual dude. Like, he's not as strong as Clark, but he has a brain to match his brawn, so... And then it's like, so it kind of makes sense, I guess being smart comes with the Luthor name. It's just kind of like, hey, if you're a Luthor, you're going to be smart. So that was just kind of cool. But like I said, kind of be nice to kind of see Wynn and her kind of hitting it off, just because it's like, I don't know, Wynn doesn't have too many people he can get all like, the word, I guess, would be nerdy and dorky with. It's like he doesn't have that many people he can do that with. So that's nice. And another element in this episode, like I already knew they were setting this whole thing up because I already got spoiled for it. Thanks, SourceFed Nerd. Thanks, Superhero Roundup / Superhero Smackdown. Yeah, it was them. Basically, the whole Jimmy situation. Obviously, I won't say anything regarding like where that goes in the future, like then because I already got spoiled from what his name is, but I won't say it. But the whole like Jimmy wanted to be a vigilante type of thing. I mean, not necessarily a vigilante. He wanted to be a hero, which is understandable. Which I'll admit, Jimmy can kick some serious ass. He's like, I have a black belt. It's like, you do? That never came up once in season 1, did it? But once again, transitioning over to to CW, it's like I guess they got some of that Arrow choreography. I can never say that word right. I sound so weird saying it. You know what I'm trying to say. I literally have to cut that out every time I say that word because I say it so weird. But you get what I mean. So, but that was kind of interesting to see him kick ass a little bit. I was like, wow, punching and kicking like that. I was like, go Jimmy. I mean, granted, he got his ass handed to him, but still. And he showed up later on, like kind of hiding his face in the hood, got a metal bat and everything. It's like, oh, I mean, I appreciate, you know, you going all Casey Jones on him like that. Interesting that I would use that reference considering Stephen Amell, you know, Oliver Queen, who plays Oliver Queen, played Casey Jones in the, you know, most recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies, you know, tying it in like that. Nevertheless, but still, it's kind of understandable where he's coming from, because it's like you see all this stuff going down, and it's like the people, your close friends, are superheroes. They're capes, and it's like you're always being protected by them, and he's like, you want to do something good. I mean, for him, it hits him even harder because it's like his dad's camera got smashed in the struggle, and it's like that camera meant a lot to him. It was one of the few things he has left of his dad, so he treasured it. So if he can't even protect that, you feel like, I can't even stop a bunch of robbers. It's like, what good am I? Because his dad was a soldier, and it's like he wants to honor his dad by, you know, fighting, because he's trying to find his calling in life. And, you know, Wynn kind of figures it out, like, oh, you ended up going all vigilante and everything. It's like, you're going to get yourself killed. He's like, Wynn, you found your job. You're at the DEO, and you're killing it over there. You're doing your job. You're doing what you were meant to do, you know, because, you know, the fact is that, you know, even Wynn himself later on admits, he's like, yeah, I'm sitting here trying to make sure certain celebrities' baby names don't get leaked before, you know, Catco ends up running the story or something like that. And it's just kind of like, now he's at the DEO kicking ass, but, you know, at first he was kind of like, I don't want you to do this. It's like, we're kind of the information people. We gather information and we ship it out. As simple as that. Like, we're not the go out there and kick ass and take names type of people. Like, that's just not what we are. But it's like, you know, now they're going to work together, and, you know, Wynn's like, okay, I'll help you out. Just don't do anything stupid until I get your suit and everything ready. And it's like, okay, I see it. Like, I like that. It's just because there's also bringing Jimmy and Wynn together, because they haven't really had too much interaction so far this season. It's like, I mean, more so than anything in the first season, it was more like competition, because it's like, oh, he's the love interest of the girl that I'm in love with. So it was that. So now we kind of get back to that, kind of create that duo between them. And I'm very interested. It's because they were already creating that a little bit between Wynn and Mon-El. So now it's kind of like we're transferring that over to possibly him and Jimmy. It'd be kind of interesting if you see all three of them kind of bond, to see like where they go from there. But it's like, it's going to be very interesting to see what they do with Jimmy. Obviously what comes next, who he becomes and everything. And speaking of Mon-El, I kept bringing up, I wanted him to be Superboy. I know, I forgot what Valor is apparently like his code name that he goes by. I'm sorry for spoiling that, but I just have to say that, and I'm so sour about it, because I don't want to go by Valor. I want him to be Superboy, just because I want Young Justice to exist in this show, even just on a smallest degree. I want everything to come together and be like my little Young Justice. I want it so badly. Because it's like you could set up obviously not enough to set up the Justice League, but, you know, it's like you have some of the workings of the Justice League. You know, you have Superman, you have Green Arrow, and you have the Flash and everything. So it's like you have the makings of it. Plus you have John Jones, Martian Manhunter. So it's like you do have a lot of the pieces there. And then you also have the makings of like Young Justice too, because you're in the works of having Wally West, Kid Flash. You already have Artemis. It's like, come on, it's almost there. I can almost see it. It's within my grasp. But even without going that far, even if you just keep it on Supergirl, I'm so close. We got Magan, and it's so awesome. I just wanted him to be Superboy, but he's going to be Valor. Because maybe a reason why they're also doing that too might be because the fact is, maybe they'll have future plans of introducing a Superboy in this series. It'd be very interesting. But I'm also curious to see how Kara and Mon-El's like relationship goes. I threw it out there before. It's like maybe him and Kara, there might be something there. Maybe not. You even had Wynn and Jimmy being like, hey, we shouldn't worry about that. I mean, she turned us down. There's no way she had an interest in him, right? It's like, nah, no way. Side note, I completely forgot about the whole thing with Wynn and Lena coming from underneath the table, and everyone looks at me. He's like, yeah, we weren't we weren't. Yeah, we saved the day. That's all that was. Lena didn't say anything. I guess she was just kind of like, okay, dude, that I just met underneath the table. You're acting weird. Okay, who cares what people think? It's just I don't know. Just she was very calm about the situation. She wasn't like, oh no, nothing happened, kind of agreeing with him or anything. She just kind of stayed in the background and said nothing. But nevertheless, a big part of this episode too was having Mon-El, well, particularly Kara, trying to help Mon-El kind of adjust to life, getting him a job at Catco, and not necessarily everything working out for him. He ended up like Miss Tessmacher, Jimmy's assistant, falling head over heels for him. Ended up offering to do his work. Ended up, Kara ended up catching him having sex because she was looking for him, and she used her super hearing and heard them, and she's like, ew, stop it, and ran into him. It's just like, he even commented on the fact that he hasn't had sex in, I think he said 36 years or something like that. And you see just Kara just getting so pissed at him, just like, oh man, just if you're so, if you don't want to conform to the way I do things and find a new mentor, which to me, I assumed that was like, oh, is he going to start mentoring under Jimmy? But it's like, no, they're going to stay together because Alex kind of convinced her. And it's something I caught on to. It's like, you're telling him to live his life the way you lived your life. It's like, not every life is built for everyone. It's like your life was made for you because it's like it was based on your interests and your goals in life. They don't align for him because every person in the world has to go out and find their own way. Because even Alex used herself as an example. It's like they didn't like the same music. Because when Kara originally got there, she's like, oh, I can have a sister to share all my likes and stuff like that with. But her and Kara differ in that manner of like they have a lot of differences. But I mean, obviously it doesn't stop them from loving each other. But the fact of the matter is they're two very different people, just like Kara and Mon-El are. So it's kind of like you can't be pushing him in this little bubble to kind of conform to like the way you went about life. A side note that was not brought up too is like, you've been on Earth for a while. You've kind of gotten to learn, kind of like understand the human world. You got many years and you had a family to kind of back you up. Obviously the family element was brought up. But, it's like she had years to get it, and you're kind of like pushing him to learn it in a couple of days. That's a little unfair. It's kind of a little crazy to even think you would push him like that. But at the same time, it's just because, because I think more so than anything, she's trying to make headway because it's like, she's trying, like she said last episode, she didn't get this chance with Clark, and now she gets that chance with Mon-El. And I guess more so than anything, on two levels. For one, she gets another person around her that's like her. Clark was around for a little while. That's what kind of started that whole feeling of just being, even amongst the people that love her and care about her, she's still very different. The only other person she has to compare to is John, but still, even then, it's like he's not a Kryptonian. But at the very least, Mon-El's kind of close to it. I mean, the Daxamites and Kryptonians didn't really have the best relationship, but still, similar situation of knowing what it's like. I mean, really, John knows the whole situation too, like being the last of his people. I mean, even now, he's no longer the last of his people. Ha ha ha, with Magan back. I'm waiting for that storyline to heat up. But nevertheless, like I said, so more so than anything, Mon-El is kind of the closest thing in that situation to like fitting her situation a little closer. Side note, just in case you might not listen to the Super Fantifies and whatnot, I talked about this then, so I felt like, because it pertains more to this now. Well, I mean, so I mentioned it in the Super Fantify, like about the most recent episode of Vampire Diaries, so I'm gonna mention it here too. It kept bothering me for the longest time why the actor who plays Mon-El, I was like, why do I feel like I know you from something? And once that gets stuck in my head, it irritates me to no end. Well, this past episode of Vampire Diaries, it finally clicked because of everything happening. It's like flashbacks and stuff like that about Bonnie and, Damon and the whole like being trapped in the prison world type of thing. It clicked on my head. I was like, oh, the actor who plays Mon-El is the actor who played Kai. Like I said, I mentioned it before, but I figured I might as well mention it in this one because it bothered me to know. I was like, why do I feel like I know you from something? And that ends up being what I know him from. There's probably something else, but that's probably the thing that I really know him most from. That was I've probably seen him in other stuff. I probably just didn't realize it. But nevertheless. But you also have Alex's situation in this episode. Now, I loved Alex doing her thing and just Maggie being like, yeah, me and my girlfriend broke up. And Alex is like, oh, wow, you and your girlfriend broke up? Yes, yes, score. Tell me all about it. I'm here for you to cry. You're here to be the shoulder to cry on. Tell me about it. Oh, man, that sucks. You guys broke up. Yes, yes. Granted, Alex wasn't all like that, but it's like you could read it all over her face. You could feel it just emitting from her body. And then later on, she's like, you know what, Maggie, let's go hang out. Let's go have fun and everything. And then Maggie's like, oh, I thought I read you wrong, Danvers. She's like, what are you talking about? It's like, I didn't know you were gay. She's like, wait, I'm not. Like, what do you, it's like, oh, it's like, I'm just misreading this situation. I just thought, it's like, no, it's cool. And then things got super awkward. But then later on, Alex kind of talked to her, basically like, Alex doesn't know what her situation is. I mean, truth be told, it's like, hey, you take time to figure yourself out, you know? I mean, because it's like, for her, she spent her whole life, I mean, because we've never really known about her dating life, and she brought it up this episode. She was kind of like, I've never really clicked with anyone. It was just like, I never got the whole attachment to people thing, like, kind of like the nuance of connecting with someone like that. Like, it never really happened until Maggie, which is kind of interesting. And it's just kind of like, you know, Alice has got a lot of stuff to figure out. But it's like, yo, it's like, hey, I don't have a problem with you being with Maggie. Like, if you want that, please, because they click so well together. It's like, not only are you going to be kick-ass partners on the field, but also in your personal life, too. But like I said, it comes down to Alex. It comes down to what she wants. Like, I mean, she's still in that state of trying to figure things out. I'm sure if she was all for it, I'm sure Maggie would be too, because, you know, it seems like Maggie kind of likes her too. I mean, the only reason why Maggie held herself back is because she was like, oh, I didn't think you were possibly, you went that way. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes in the future, and see if, like, after that whole thing, you know, just being like, you know, trying to figure herself out, like, is things between her and Maggie gonna be awkward? Because I love the whole thing about, like, oh man, Maggie's so depressed. It's like, she's not her usual self. She's just kind of like a kick-ass badass, but now she's kind of like sad and everything. And it's like, Wynn was like, yeah, I'd try not to interfere with people's love life. It's like, really? The whole you being in love with Kara thing? He's like, well, that's different. I was in love with her, so, and then, you know, my situation is different from yours. And then that kind of got Alex thinking, like, wait, do I have feelings for Maggie? It's so interesting, dude. I'm very interested to see where that goes. Like I said, because the first season never really gave you much of a look at Alex's personal life, because her life has always been Kara, and then eventually became the DEO, which, you know, granted, everything has always been about Kara. Her life's kind of revolved around. This is kind of her first time, at least, you know, show-wise, and maybe in her personal life, of actually having, well, a personal life. So that's going to be interesting to see, like, because it's going to be different for her, because she's always been job focused and everything, which it seems like that's something her and Maggie share. That's kind of why her girlfriend broke up with her, because it's like, you're so focused on your work and everything. So it's like they're both kind of workaholics. So plus they're both connected to the alien world in different reasons and stuff like that. So, but overall, a very good episode, and I cannot wait to see what the next episode. I was about to say next week. I refuse to ever say next week again, because you never know when, like, the, you know, things come up and it's like, oh, like, either it's like a show's taking a break or something like that, or something on the channel comes up. So it's like, from now on, it's just gonna be like, to the, you know, I can't wait to see what's happening in the next episode. I should just leave it at that, because it left things simple, but I had to be an idiot about it. Now moving on to this week's episode of Lucifer. So, very interesting episode this week, where we had Chloe's dad's murder being the case. I mean, granted, like, it's interesting because I was actually thinking, like, oh, this is going to be about Chloe solving her dad's case. It's like, oh no, her dad's safe case is already solved. The dude who killed her dad, Joe Fields, is already locked up. I was like, oh, but he's getting out. It's like, oh, this is going to make things interesting. But, you know, he ends up getting released, and it turns out he winds up ending up dead, and Chloe's there over the body. Now, the episode didn't go the way I thought it was going to. Immediately, I was like, oh man, it's going to turn into, I was like, the moment she started walking up on the van, I was like, oh dude, this is going to turn into, oh man, Chloe's guilty, isn't it? Like, oh, everyone's going to think Chloe's guilty, and they're going to have to try and prove her innocence. Chloe's going to have to try to prove her innocence. But no. She didn't have to, because it's like the episode didn't take that turn. It could have. It almost, to a certain degree, kind of did, because she was the first one to discover the body and everything. But it didn't go down that route. Like I said, could have. But the whole situation with her dad's storyline, it was kind of, interesting because it's like she was so set in her mind that Joe Fields had killed her dad. So it did seem like she probably wasn't nearly at beginning as remorseful, because even Lucifer was like, oh, you should be happy. The man who killed your dad is dead. But she didn't necessarily look happy. And because no matter what the situation is, whether he's locked up or dead, it doesn't change the fact is that her dad is gone. And, it doesn't make it that any easier, but you'd think there'd be a little, it's hard to say whether or not she was relieved or not. Because maybe there's a part of her that's like, no, he got off easy. He shouldn't rot for the rest of his life. But then evidence turns up and it's like, oh, he lied. He took the fall so basically his daughter, who's currently pregnant and having a child of her own, would be supported, for him taking the fall for it and everything. Then there was that other guy who ended up taking, just a whole bunch of people in this episode taking falls for crimes they didn't commit. And it turns out the reason why, obviously they were being paid for their families to be taken care of. And then it turns out the real killer behind it all was the warden. Like, of course it's going to be the guy who implants himself in the investigation, be like, oh yeah, I'm here to help you. I'm so sorry about this and that. But it's like, the reason why he killed Chloe's dad, because it did seem like from what we saw in the preview, because I was like, yeah, that didn't seem like a random targeting. Like, he could have just, the person that shot him is like, no, that person straight up like aimed for him, killed him first, and then got what they wanted. Because if it was that case, they would have there was a different way to handle it. Because if he hit, you could be like, it was a random thing, but it's like, no, they waited and they made sure to kill him. So it's kind of like, it made it seem like it was a hit anyway. But basically, her dad was kind of nosing in on his business, and he had to take him out. And he was like, I'm offering you to not have to worry about that. He's like, I'm going to offer him probably stuff to kind of back down. But Chloe's dad, being the honorable dude he was, wouldn't back down. Lucifer and Maze are there offering her an opportunity to kind of get her revenge and punish him. But they really didn't say anything on the matter. But I think for them, Chloe's punishment for him was the best punishment. It's like, you're a warden. I'm sure all your prisoners are going to appreciate the fact is that you're going to be locked up in there with them. So just know, I want you to know that it was me. It was my, John Decker's daughter that took you down, So it was kind of sad because it's like, because you also had that conversation with her, with Trixie, where she's like, why don't you ever talk about dad? It's like, it's kind of like, I'm sure for anyone under any circumstances, I mean, especially under those circumstances, it's not the easiest thing to talk about. But it's like, she makes Trixie these special sandwiches that her dad used to make her like all the time after acting class or whatever. And she's like, that basically she's like, would Grandpa have made these for me or liked me? And Chloe's like, obviously he would have, so it's kind of sweet, adorable moment. It just kind of breaks your heart. But a really big part of this episode too is Lucifer's whole situation of trying to figure out what he's going to do with himself. Basically, after last week's episode of revealing himself to Dr. Martin, which we'll get to a little bit later on. But the fact of the matter is, he's tired of being Lucifer Morningstar. He wants to kind of change things up. So he decides, I need to stop being me because I hurt a lot of the people around me, whether I mean to or not. He's like, so I need to learn how to be a different person. And he decides to kind of start shadowing Dan and kind of become more like Dan. He's like, how do I become like you? How do I care a little more? How do I become a tool like you? Even going as far as dressing like Dan, even at one point, putting on an American accent and being like, oh yeah, sure thing, partner, and everything. It's like, dude, I wish he was able to keep it up a little bit longer, but Dan was like, stop it, just stop. He's like, all right, fine, and went back to his natural accent. It's one of those episodes again. It's like we got it with the Weaponizer episode. We get it again this episode where we get to see Lucifer and Dan kind of click. It seems like a big part of this season isn't just about Lucifer. It's obviously Lucifer's relationship with every character is kind of a big part, but it's like we're seeing it develop more, not just with Chloe, but also Dan too. And it's interesting and weird because it's like they don't hate each other. Lucifer just obviously thinks of Dan is a douche. That's why he always calls him like Detective Douche and everything. And I love the ship name he gave them. He's like, Lucifer. I like that. It's just like, dude. But like I said, it's just like them working together, actually kind of playing off each other. And, Lucifer going like, I get why you dress like the way you do, if you're so low key that you kind of catch the guy that you're trying to catch off guard, because it was like, oh, you kind of disappear in a crowd when you kind of look normal and everything. So it's like, I get it. So it was interesting to see that aspect of things as well. Even learning the fact is that Dan actually does improv, which I love. Lucifer coming, he's like, come on, I was expecting maybe Human Centipede, possibly even Clown Porn, but not improv. And going, and even had Dan even going as far as pretending to be Lucifer, putting on a fake accent and everything and acting like a complete douche, which kind of pissed Lucifer off, which Lucifer explained to him was like the reason why he did all this is because he wanted to escape being himself, because he got tired of hurting the people around him. Because there's even that moment where they're trying to hire that hitman, kind of obviously get evidence against him, but that hitman dude who basically, like, he basically calls himself kind of a human lie detector. He can tell when someone's lying. And then Lucifer was like, you know what? I'm putting a hit out. He pretending to be Dan. He was like, I'm gonna put a hit out on my on Lucifer Morningstar. He's like, I hate this guy because he hurts not just his enemies, but even those close to him, and he just causes problems for them. And it's like, you see that the guy's not can see that it's the truth. Even Dan chiming in and everything, like, yeah, he's such a loose cannon. He needs to be taken care of. It's like, oh man, you both really hate this Lucifer Morningstar. And then Lucifer kind of turns towards it and it's like, apparently so. But it's like, that's the big theme, is like, Lucifer feels very destructive. Like, you know, like he destroyed something, a pivotal relationship for him, and that was Linda. I mean, it's not even just her. It's probably a combination of the fact this is what happened with Uriel, built upon the fact is that he was honest with her. I mean, he was like, even Dan was like, well, you know, life is simple. It's like, no, he's like, my life is not that simple. He's like, didn't tell me about it. He's like, I can't. The last time I opened up to a person, you know, they kind of shut down on me, and like Linda kind of did, which, like I said, I'll get to that soon enough. But it was really interesting to see them have that heart to heart, because it's like Dan is like, it's his way. This whole improv thing is his way of dealing with the whole divorce with Chloe. That, you know, life isn't all that pieced together for him. He doesn't have all the answers because he himself is still trying to figure it out, just like Lucifer is. Because for him, he's done a lot of bad things and he's just trying to do what he can to. The whole divorce situation was because he was trying to find some way to kind of make up for all he's done, you know. He, at the very least, I guess, because in his mind, at the very least, he owes that to Chloe, you know? And it's just interesting to see them kind of bonding like that, because it's kind of a situation where they both understood each other, whether they 100% realized it or not. And yeah. But this episode, once again, not just, like I said, not just pushing his relationship with Dan forward, but also his relationship with Chloe, because, you know, Lucifer was there for her. He was like, you know, he actually said the right things. He's like, you know, he's like, unlike me, you have a, you know, you have had a good relationship with your dad, and like, he sounds like he was a good man, and I'm sure he'd be very proud of you and everything. And she's tearing up at it. He's like, what? Am I making you sad? I'm sorry. Like, she's like, I'm not, you know, I'm not crying like because I'm sad, and hugs him and everything. It's like, dude, that's so sweet. I still kind of, like, part of me is like, I don't know what I want with that. Do I want her back with Dan? Because I feel like that's the right fit, but at the same time, I kind of want her with Lucifer. Part of me was wondering, it's like, legitimately went through my mind, I was like, is she going to kiss Lucifer or something? It's like, I kind of have to expect that, but I don't think it's ever going to get there. I think she will always, it'd be a very platonic relationship. Yeah, he wants to hit on her and everything. I mean, granted, it was that time last season where she got super drunk and was kind of throwing herself at Lucifer to a certain degree. So that was kind of interesting. And then she woke up and she's like, oh my God, did we do anything? And Lucifer's making her think like, oh yeah, it's just like, you came here super drunk, even though nothing happened between them. I don't know. It's just like, I love to seeing their relationship grow, but it will seem like it will always be platonic in the sense of just like, cause she was like, you know, when she was about to go after the warden, Lucifer's like, oh, shouldn't you get dead? You shouldn't have me by your side. It's like, no, when I want to do this, I want to have my partner by my side. I'm like, the feels. And, God, like I said, it's just amazing to see that relationship grow. I guess it'll be kind of back to, normal rotations, next episode, because it's kind of been back to back episode of seeing their relationship changing a little bit, because you had the episode, last week's episode with her, with Lucifer kind of going through the whole killing Uriel thing, the backlash of that, and kind of being out of sorts. And now you see this episode, you had Chloe being out of sorts because of the whole situation with her dad, killer. I've had one. But getting to the point, the last point of the episode is the whole Linda situation. Freaked out, and then Maze, like, I love Maze popped up at her place at her office, and she's like backing away from the door. She's like, okay, good. And she turns around, Maze is there. She's like, oh, you can teleport? She's like, what? No, I can't. I went crawled through the window. It's like, you know. She knows. He showed you. She's like, yeah. And it's like, you're a demon. And then, because Maze is like, well, what difference does that make? It's just like, I mean, to give Linda some credit, it's like her entire world got flipped upside down. She literally thought all this was some huge, gigantic metaphor, and now she finds out it was all real. I mean, for one, not only is that crazy enough already, but, you know, I mean, we don't know what her religious standpoint is. It's like, oh, so the devil and God and everything is real. I mean, to believe in something is one thing, but to also see it in front of you, it's like, you might believe in the devil, but to actually see him face to face is a kind of another thing. Because that's the thing, like, once again, we don't actually know where she stands on the whole religion thing. So it also makes you wonder what's going to be like when she talks to the Minidel. And I wonder what's going to happen with that when she admits, like, yeah, Lucifer showed me, so you're really an angel, aren't you? And it's just like, dude, that's going to be so good. I'm so interested to see what that means for everyone's relationships now. Like, I mean, obviously we see her and Maze are kind of okay. She's like, yeah, you can go out with me, have a drink, or I can, you know, devour your soul and everything. And it's like, I think it's a little too soon to be making those type of jokes, Maze. But I'm just so interested in that to see what that means going forth for everybody. Like, hanging out with Maze, it's like you're the only human who knows the truth about what they are. And it's going to be interesting to see, like I said, see everyone's interaction. Dude, what if Lucifer brings his mom to therapy? Oh, that'd be amazing. Dude, I'm like, okay, Dr. Martin, this is my mother, a goddess, and then just turns into a full-blown therapy session. What if we get most of the family together? We get Aminadel, Lucifer, and their mom there and just have a sit down and talk. That'd be interesting. Because we didn't really get any look at her and Aminadel in this episode. Because the last time we saw, it seemed like she was manipulating Aminadel, which like I said, they put it they make it so it's like, yeah, their mom can't be trusted. You already know that she's got some plan up her sleeve. And it seems like whatever she's doing, it seems like she's making leeway. Now, what I'm wondering is maybe she won't be able to get to Lucifer because Lucifer has Chloe to kind of keep him balanced. Aminadab's lost everything. He's lost his powers. He lost his brother. He lost his faith in their father. Lucifer never had much to begin with, so it's okay. He has the people around him that care about him to kind of keep him going, so... And also, final note, Maze being a bounty hunter. It's like, the moment she wrangled, like, you know, the Warren and kind of caught him and everything, I was like, the moment that happened, I was like, oh, bounty hunter. I was like, oh, that'd be a good job for you. And lo and behold, like, literally, like, a couple minutes later, she's like, oh, I got my first paycheck. I'm a bounty hunter. It's like, it fits you well. It's like, she's like, who knew hunting humans could be a job? So it's going to be interesting to see, like, that in the future. I'm just like, you find something that you're very good at. And it's like, there's not much of a torturing job out there, which, you know, sounds like she was very good at that in Hell. But capturing people is kind of something she's good at, especially because she's so well trained and everything. So, like I said, I'm just interested to see where everything goes from here. And finally, moving on to this week's episode of Gotham. So the big part of this episode is Barnes losing control of himself on multiple occasions, like especially at the beginning. He literally ripped that dude apart, that guy who was like a cleaner. It's just because his sense of justice, like he ends up saying it in the episode, like basically the cop side of him that wants justice, that feels like justice, you know, there's criminals, you lock them up one day, literally 3 days later you see them walking the street just because the justice system's a little corrupt. And well, not necessarily that it's corrupt. Well, in Gotham City, yes, but it's just, it's not the most foolproof system. So it just, that combined with Alice's blood kind of awakened that in him. Like, it taps into different things to different people. And, you know, he, after talking to the Mad Hatter, he kind of learns that it taps into his anger. Well, not particularly his anger, his rage, because pure on rage, because he ripped the dude's arm off, ripped his head off and everything. And, you know, he even talked to the Mad Hatter, is like, okay, I need a cure for this. And it's like, the only cure for it is for you to submit to my sister. It's like, until that little bit of you that's left is completely gone and my sister takes complete control. because he's saying like it's a virus. It's kind of almost an intellectual virus because it almost makes you think like, oh, you're in the clear. It's like, okay, I'm in control. I'm still me. But then all of a sudden the voices will start, and then you'll be like, oh no, you've lost it. Then it means that the virus has kind of fully taken control of you. But multiple times throughout the episode, Barnes kept pushing himself to be like, nope, I'm not going to do it. He beat the crap out of that first dude that led him to the surgeon. Had him locked up in his trunk. I guess he eventually let him go. He's like, aren't you going to let, it's like he stopped himself both times. I mean, I was pretty sure he was going to kill the surgeon, but it's like part of me was also like, but how are you going to explain that to the witness? It's like she's literally right there watching you beat the smack out of a dude, got your gun on him and everything. But he brought him in and arrested him. Like I said, I find it a little ironic because always the whole big problem with him was the fact is that he had such a problem with Jim because Jim always skated the law and did very, obviously very gray area stuff. I mean, a lot of gray area stuff, but a lot of stuff just purely crossing the line. It's like now you have him doing that. Obviously, it's under different circumstances because Jim kind of did that of his own volition. Well, Barnes isn't necessarily in the right state of mind. Granted, you could argue it's like this is kind of him in his purest form because it's like he's just kind of acting on his deepest, darkest impulses. He just doesn't have his conscience there to kind of tell him, oh, this is wrong, this is bad, don't do that. So there was even a conversation he ended up having with Falcone later on in the episode, being like, I'm not going to have a casual conversation with you. You're a bad guy. You deserve to be behind bars and stuff like that. Doesn't matter if you've done a few good things. It doesn't justify what you do. And then Falcone kind of throwing it back at him. He's like, a man who tends to kind of put up that much of a fuss about things like that is like, typically they're not saying it to the person they're talking to. They're kind of a little self-reflection in the words that they say. And that's true because Barnes was actually, the thing is Barnes realized what he did was wrong, that he's losing control. He was going to leave the badge and the gun behind. Like he was going to retire. Like I'm sure he was going to take some time off or just go somewhere. Part of me was thinking he was going to go the other route and just kill himself. When he pulled out the gun, I was like, whoa, are you about to? It's like, oh, you just put your badge on the desk. Okay. So it seemed like he was going to try and walk away before it got too late, but it seems, with this episode, it seems like it already is too late because he killed that surgeon, Simon, ended up slamming him everywhere, then bashed him against the wall multiple times. And now he's talking about the fact that, like, hey, he's the judge, jury, and the executioner, essentially, and breaks him through the wall, and it ends up, he ends up falling to his death onto a car. I mean, granted, he's not dead. He's still alive. I mean, I'm sure he probably died afterwards. I mean, we'll have to really wait till the next episode to find out, like, did he actually die, or is he just severely wounded, and we'll see him going to be put into a hospital. I mean, picked up by an ambulance later on or something like that. But you hear Barnes being like, it's not just you, it's all of Gotham, the whole system. He's like, I'm going to make it, clean again, essentially. He even says it to Jim, it's like, yo, we're going to clean up this city. And Jim's like, okay. And then Jim goes outside and hears from Simon. It's like, Barnes did it to him. And it's like, dude, I wasn't expecting, I was sure he was dead. I was like, oh man, this is going to turn into a situation where they're hunting down this kind of unnamed vigilante, is kind of like this unseen vigilante, and that Barnes would be able to keep it hush-hush the entire time. I mean, there was even a point where Barnes was actually going to turn himself in until he saw Simon, and that just kind of reinvigorated the hate inside of his heart. So that's going to be very interesting to see what Jim does with this knowledge. I mean, he is just getting back, and it's like he doesn't have any necessarily any proof to prove that Barnes did it. But, they'll probably soon find out. It's like, oh yeah, he's contaminated by Alice's blood. Will that change anything? I don't know. Because maybe, even if they find a cure for him, Barnes will probably still step down because he'll be like, no, I can't. Or maybe, just maybe, you'll have Jim kind of biding his time until he's able to gather enough evidence to kind of prove it's more. Because he doesn't want to act too quickly because he doesn't. It's like, how can you really take a criminal's word on it, like I'm saying, like, oh yeah, Barnes did this to him. So we'll just kind of have to see. Another part of this episode I love was Jim and Lee, just how weird and awkward things are between them and everything, especially after Jim's last adventure, last episode, kind of confronting the truth, whether he's ready to admit it or not, how he really feels about Lee and everything. I even love what Harvey said, but like, yeah, oh yeah, man, everyone, because Lucian was like, yeah, everyone, oh yeah, Lee left early because it's like her engagement party, and then Harvey's like, yeah, there's gonna be a lot of drinking and beautiful women, and it's like, Harvey, you can go if you want to. He's like, nah, I want to stay here with my partner. He's like, make up some time with my partner. Besides, I wasn't invited. It's kind of like, why wasn't he invited? You know, you would think Lee would invite him, but I guess it's kind of like, I guess she had her particular reasons. Maybe it's because maybe she didn't think to invite him. You know, maybe more so than anything, maybe the invitations were passed out by Mario. I mean, well, maybe even go as far as saying Falcone's the one that kind of handed them out. Carmine, just to kind of specify which Falcone I'm talking about. So maybe that's the reason why, is because he has such a, you know, maybe it's also because Mario could be like, yeah, I'm not inviting Jim's partner, especially because Jim's bad, which Mario wasn't too happy about that, but Lee's like, trust me, you trust me, right? He's like, right. Which led to an interesting conversation. I mean, you can't see it, but I am throwing up quotation marks when I say conversation between him and Jim. And he kind of does the same thing that Lee pointed out last episode, as well as Valerie. Well, last episode being like, hey, the reason why you chose Lee is because you knew that he would shoot Valerie. You're still in love with him, aren't you? And he's like, dude, calm down. I'm not, you're crazy. And then Mario stops and is like, Jim, you told me that if I did anything to hurt Lee, you would make me pay. You'd probably kill me. He's like, well, I will do just about anything to keep her, which is very obsessive in my opinion. The fact is that he straight out said that. It's not like, oh, I'll protect her from you because you're a dark influence bad upon her. It's like, no, his exact words were, I would do anything to keep her. So I don't know. I don't know. There's a negative connotation behind that. Like I said, it sounds very obsessive. And then like Jim is like, yo, for Lee said, like, you know, word of advice, lose the jealousy. Like, it just ruined things between you and Lee. Jim's about to walk away and Mario punches him straight in the face. I'm like, ooh. And then Jim looks like about to hit him back, but I was like, don't do it, Jim. Don't hit him. Don't hit him. It's just going to make things worse. And he's like, for Lee's sake, you get a free one. I was like, wow. There you go, Jim. I mean, granted, it's your first day back on the force. You don't want to kind of do anything to jeopardize that. Plus, you know, you might have feelings for Lee, but you're going to keep that to yourself. You know, because the fact is, Mario doesn't realize, like, the more he's acting out, like, the more he's going to end up pushing them closer together. Is because, yes, they're working together and everything, but neither one of them is going to admit how they really feel. Because you can obviously tell Lee still has feelings for Jim just as much as he does for her, because she's happy that he's working. I mean, obviously, she's happy he's back because it's like, hey, he's back on the right path and everything. So that he's kind of back on stable ground in a manner of sense. To me, I don't like how I'm viewing that situation, and it'd be kind of interesting if they decided to go this route, is if you have, like, because of his jealousy and everything, Mario trying to set Jim off, being like, oh yeah, like turn Lee against him, being like, you know, set him up in a situation where like Jim tries to defend himself and kind of beats the crap out of Mario, but then Lee shows up and it's like, Jim, what are you doing? Beating up on my fiance. And Mario plays like victim, and is like his way of turning Lee against Jim in that sense. Maybe not, because already I'm very curious to see where Carmine, plays a role in this, because he already stated that back in the beginning, being like, the fact of the matter is, he kind of already can kind of tell that, you know, he obviously knows the history between Jim and Lee, and he's like, you know, nothing worse than kind of like when, you know, it's like, this is his son's heart he's looking out for. He's like, I don't want you coming into this when you still have feelings for Gordon, and she's like, I don't. So it's going to be interesting to see what he has to say about all this too, so. And then final note of the episode is the whole thing with Isabella and Ed, still continuing their romance, and like, you already knew something was wrong with Isabella, because the fact that she accepted Ed is like, oh yeah, you murdered your last girlfriend? I don't care. Let's still stick it together. Okay. that's weird. And then she puts on the glasses, and then Ed starts freaking out. It's like, oh man, you look just like Kristen. I'm gonna go to the bathroom and everything. And then lo and behold, who he sees in the mirror, and he's freaking out and everything. She's like, really? You're freaking out? Like I'm the first thing you've ever seen in the mirror. Was that back in season 1 or was that season 2? The whole like him dealing with like kind of him facing his alter ego, kind of facing the man he kind of is right now, becoming more so the Riddler, kind of like you see the person he was trying to be before, the Ed we knew in the past, and then the Riddler aspect of him, and when they finally came together as two. So, kind of got to see that, and it was a weird situation, especially because it's like you had Oswald being like, "Oh, I guess you have no choice but to break up with her." He's like, "Oswald, will you break up with her for me? I'd be a favor. You know, I'd owe you a debt." He's like, I guess if you want me to, I'll have to break the sad news to her. La di da di da. This is the best day ever. I get to ruin their relationship. Yippee! And he goes over and tells her bad news. It's over. And she's like a little brokenhearted. She's like, no, I'm not going to give up on him. He thinks he's worried because he'll look at me and he's afraid he's going to hurt me like he did his last girlfriend. She's almost just like, it's actually sweet because he's breaking up with me out of love. And as she looks into Penguin's eyes, she's like, you love him too, don't you? And it's like, ooh, she figured it out. And it was almost what I brought up before, being like, he's my man. Keep your hands away from my man. It's like, no, he belongs to me. I'm taking him. I won't let you have your way. And then Penguin threatens her. It's like, don't forget who you're up against, Missy. And then she does a very twisted thing of dressing up like Kristen, dyeing her hair, putting on the glasses. You know why I was an idiot? I didn't realize it was the same actress. Like, the fact is that she dressed up like that, it clicked in my head. Like, oh, it's the exact same actress. The reason why she looks so similar. Just because she looks so different with different colored hair and not wearing her glasses, she looked like an almost completely different person. But seeing her dressed up like Kristen was like freaky. And then like you saw Ed freaking out about it too. And then like she grabs his hand and puts it around her throat. And then he start making out of her. I'm like, this is one of the most twisted TV relationships I have ever seen. That is just, I would go as far as saying psychotic. But I mean, it's like they were meant to be together. It's like she accepts Ed for being the twisted person he is, because she's, I'd go as far as saying just as twisted as he is. But then, everything was all well and good. And then lo and behold, it turns into a situation where Penguin's like, no, new girlfriend's got to go. I need Ed to come to me. He'll be brokenhearted. It's such a shame, but he'll always have my shoulder to cry on. So cut her brakes. Her car gets hit by the train. We didn't really get to see too much of that. I hope on everything she's still alive. I think that's going to be the twist. It's going to be like Penguin thinks she's dead and Ed finds out, thinks she's dead and everything. And then it's just like, oh, Ed, don't worry. And then she comes waltzing back in. It's like, oh, Ed, I'm still alive. I'm okay. Or maybe the fact is that Penguin's like, oh, I heard some bad news that Isabella's dead. And then she pops up. Either way, it'd be awesome. Because Isabella isn't backing down. And neither is Penguin. I want to see that kind of turn into an even bigger thing of being like, oh, I'm going to get Ed. Ed belongs to me. No, Ed belongs to me. He's my man. It's like, because even when she found out about Penguin's feelings, she's like, I'm not even jealous. Part of me is thinking, like, because part of her brain is like, part of her is like, because you're not even competition. Ed loves me. He doesn't love you. He cares for you and everything because you're a dear friend to him. But me, I'm who he really loves. Because even Penguin going as far as being like, oh, you have these couple things in common, but, you can't match Ed intellectually. I can be there for him. I'm the better fit for him, essentially. So it's going to be wild and crazy to see where that progresses. And also, a slight note, I kind of skipped over it in this earlier, was Barbara showing up at the event and everything, and Lee's like, get the hell out of here. She's like, okay, yes, I kidnapped you and everything, threatened to kill you. I mean, to be fair, you beat the crap out of me, beat me unconscious and everything, so it's like, we're kind of square, aren't we? And then she ends up bringing up something. She's like, you still love James Gordon, don't you? You kind of miss him. She's like, what would I miss about him? It's like that heat from the fact is a man constantly battling with the light and darkness inside of him. It's just kind of, she's like, almost like glorifying it. Like, oh, it's sexy, isn't it? She's like, well, a man who's still struggling with his stuff, or a man like Mario who's a very nice man and everything. It's like, I love him. He's a sweet, caring person, which the fact of the matter is, no person is not without their darkness. Like I said, because even Lee, we've seen Lee's dark side when it came to like the fact is that I mean, granted, she was defending herself, but she still beat the crap out of Barbara. Wasn't that back in season 1? So yeah, so she beat the crap out of Barbara. Even when Barbara was unconscious at Arkham, she was even kind of talking about going as far as calling her a bitch and everything while she was unconscious and everything. So it's like Lee's got a dark side. And in this episode, we kind of saw that, hey, Mario's no different. He's got a bit of a dark side too, especially when it comes to jealousy. So, but the fact is, Barbara was like, it's kind of, oh man, you actually believe that. You've actually you're so deluded that you actually believe that lie that you're spouting. But it is something Lee is going to have to come to terms with. It's like, would you really expect anything different? It's like, no matter what happened, like, you know, your feelings for someone, you know, especially someone that you love and everything, aren't just going to vanish like that. And it's like being within the same vicinity as one another. Of course, those flames are going to get reunited. It's like you might be moving on with your life, but that's the thing about exes. You know, even when they don't try to, because neither one of them is trying to get drawn back in, but they can't help it because the heart wants what the heart wants. It's, you know, it works like that. That's just how it is. You can break it down scientifically and everything, but there's just certain things happen. Like, that's just how the heart works. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. I'm very curious because I brought it up last episode. I think I brought it up. Maybe I didn't. I'm very curious to see what happens between Jim and Barbara now. Like, especially after that whole hallucination and her being like hey, like, you know, person kind of showing him along his journey. His path and everything. I'm very curious to find out, like, has his, like, perspective of Barbara or the relationship between them become different. I want to see that in the next episode or something. At some point soon, I want to see if they've changed. Or is it just maybe whether it's because of the hallucination or just the new path he's on. I want to see if things have kind of changed between him and Barbara. Is he kind of nicer to her and everything and not kind of like pushing her around a little bit and everything? I'm just curious, so. But that's all I really want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.